Hey guys, welcome back to the Tubes and Tires YouTube channel. As always, I'm Zach, and this week we're finishing up my girlfriend's V8 TJ Jeep. So let's get after it.
Hey, is that Timmy's?
Yeah, because we're in Canada. Alright guys, so hopefully in today's video we're going to get the Jeep all buttoned up. To catch you up since last time, if you didn't see the last video, definitely go check that out. There's a playlist on this whole Jeep of this small block Chevy swap Jeep. That's from my girlfriend. But we did the cooling system, we finished up the power steering lines and all that kind of stuff. We did exhaust, and we put the lift kit in the front end, so it's sitting nice and level now. It's a little higher, but hopefully it's going to go down yet. Definitely go check out those videos if you haven't watched this thing. It's, the Jeep is looking pretty sweet. But we have only a few things to finish up in today's video, but if you watched the last one, we're having transmission troubles. So basically, we're going to finish it off, put it all together to the way I want it, and then we're going to rip it apart again and rip the transmission out of it. So basically where we're going to start is we're going to lift this thing up in the air. We're going to finish off a few little bits of wiring. We sell just some plugs for like reverse lights and that kind of thing. And then we're going to make up the four-wheel drive shifter, and then we'll see where we get from there. So I'm going to get this thing in the air, and then we're going to see what we got to do with the old linkage to make it work on the NV3500. So let's get after it. Lacey, you going to help? Nope. Alright guys, so we got the Jeep up in the air, so I thought I'd show you what we got going on underneath here. We'll start with wiring, because that's a little easier to figure out here. I've already done two things. All we had to do for the reverse lights, I reused the GM sensor. I just changed the plug on that, just did some soldering there, so the reverse lights work now, so that's really cool. The other one is for the four-wheel drive indicator. It never worked on this Jeep for some reason anyways, but all I had to do was I took the Jeep sensor out of the old transfer case, and it was exactly the same as the GM one. The plugs were just different, so I just threaded that thing in there and plugged the harness in, so that worked over there. I know it's kind of hard to see, it's kind of dark over there, but whatever. So those two things are figured out here. The next thing is going to be the vehicle speed sensor. So this is a little more of a tricky thing. So me and Dad just wanted to see if this was going to work. All I did was take this out of the old transfer case, and then we just hooked a drill onto this and spun it to see if once we turned the key on, if we were gonna get a vehicle speed sensor signal, and we do. So probably later on in the video, we're gonna talk more about this on how we're gonna solve this. It actually involves a different transfer case. So I still gotta go buy that because there's somebody that has one for sale. So that's how we're gonna solve that, and we're gonna see that later on in the video. But yeah, it's going to be actually pretty easy. Hopefully, I say that now. But the next thing we got going on here is this four-wheel drive shifter. So basically we're going to have to use an amalgamation of the Jeep stuff and then the shifter rod that came with this transfer case. So basically what I'm going to do is kind of where I have this sitting, we're going to get it so that the shaft lines up a little bit better there. But I'm going to add some new tabs coming off of here, and we're just going to drill 2 holes into this fin because I think that's going to be sturdy enough for that. It's just support for that anyways. And then hopefully the shifter is going to work. Four-wheel drive and two-wheel drive are different on the shifter and this transfer case. Four-wheel drive is all the way forward on this one, and it's going to be different on the shifter handle, so I might have to do a sticker or something, whatever. We'll figure that out. But right now, I'm going to start making that up, and we'll probably come back to once we have that figured out, and then we're going to maybe finish off the interior. And then we're going to tell you why we're having transmission troubles and what we're going to do next. So let's get after it. All right, so we got that linkage all made up. It wasn't too terribly hard to make up. It was just a little bit of thinking. So I remodified that bracket there and just drilled some holes into it. And it lines up pretty good with the original mount here. We didn't change this rod whatsoever. It stayed the same. But this rod right here is an amalgamation of 2. But we can shift it all the way through the gears, but I'm going to only make it so it'll only go into second and or two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive high. So the old man's up there right now in the Jeep, so he's gonna move it so you can see that it works. All right, Dad, you ready? Oh, look at that, pretty slick. And then this, it'll be in four-wheel drive. And then if he shifts it back, now we're in two-wheel drive. So that's pretty wicked. So we might leave the old man up there for now, but we might bring him down in a little bit. But now I think we're gonna move on. Hey, listen here. I think we're gonna move on to doing the interior stuff, but that's pretty wicked. You almost blew my ears out, Dad. Holy shoot. All right, so we got the Jeep off the hoist now, and we're gonna try to figure out most of this interior stuff. We just have this warning light to actually put in the bezel over here. That's nothing to be too hard, so we're probably going to do that later on. But the main thing here is what we're going to focus on is the center console. So I chopped out a huge hole in here to actually just make that fit a lot easier. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cut a new piece of steel out of something. I got some steel over there. And then we're going to use this ram board to make up a template, so it's going to be 100%, and it should fit the first time. You know, you hope. What my plan is here is they used to have this boot that used to seal it from the elements. I have no idea if you can rebuy this one. This one has seen better days. So I found this one online. It was like 10 bucks. It's not as big as the other one, but hopefully it's going to work. So basically I'm going to do that down here on top of this shifter gate, and then that should seal, you know, it from the weather. And then we're going to have the other shifter boot that's the decorative one that used to be on the center console. But in the meantime, Dad made up this mean shifter out of this tire iron. It actually works pretty mint. So I'm going to start cutting up some steel, and we'll make that up, and then we'll probably come back to once that's all figured out, and then we'll start modifying all the other Jeep stuff to fit in here. So let's get after it. So this is the cardboard template that we made up. This is what it turned out like in steel. I just had to round it just a little bit and kind of curve the front end, but it fits in there really nicely. I just got it self-tapped down right now. We'll probably leave it like that. But the shifter boot that I bought, this thing, was too small. It didn't work, but it is what it is. We might use that down the road on something else. So I found this in the cupboard. It was big enough that when the motor runs and it vibrates, that we don't smash on anything, and it fits around that little nubber thing that hangs up in there. I don't know what you want to call it. The shifter base. So all we got to do now is we got to figure out how to get this center console all worked out. So basically what I'm thinking is this front hole, we're going to cut that out, and we're going to put the original shifter there. I'm probably going to end up making a pocket back here that maybe you can slide your phone in and other kind of junk. So that should work out. And then what we're going to do is, sadly, we're not going to be reusing Dad's beautiful shifter here. We're going to modify the original one that was in here, so I'll make it so that it can bolt on to that over there. And then this thing should look exactly like it did when we first started with it. So I'm going to start cutting that up and modifying that shifter handle, and then we'll come back to once this thing is looking all complete right here. So here we go. All right, so we got that center console all made up, and it's actually looking pretty factory. I just reused the original shifter handle. I kind of modified it a little bit so that it would work in here. I had to kind of figure out where the shifter boot had to be placed, so it wasn't all the way forward, so you can actually see in the front there I have a little panel. I'm going to glue that in once I actually take this center console back out, but it's looking pretty good. And I actually made up this plastic bucket. We had another thing around here, so I just chopped it apart, and I just used the soldering gun to melt it back together and made it fit pretty snugly in there. That pad was actually up front over here, so I just cut that to fit in the bottom, so it looks pretty mint. But that's gonna do it for inside here. And I did move that warning light, so since we're not using the computer anymore to run the engine, I just figured I would put that warning light where the check engine light is, so now when that comes on, that is the alternator light, so that's kind of neat. But now we're gonna be moving on to what's wrong with this thing. So the engine has been popping and banging, so I bought a whole bunch of stuff for that. I'm going to show you here in a second. And the transmission, obviously, I'm just like everybody else. I try to, you know, get a deal online with stuff. So I bought this NV3500 used, and it doesn't seem to be in the best of shape. It's making a lot of rattling noise. and apparently they have a lot of bearing failures. So we're gonna be splitting that thing apart, but I'll show you the stuff that we bought here for this thing. So for the motor, I got a new cap and rotors, I got some new spark plugs, I got new wires, and we're gonna throw a set of springs into it. So hopefully that's gonna fix the popping and banging. This thing did sit for a while, so I'm assuming just the springs went weak. And then for the transmission, I just bought this like simple bearing kit, and it comes with some seals and stuff like that. So we're gonna start on the motor portion of it first. We're gonna move the Jeep into the barn here. I just had it out so you guys can see that center console a little bit better. And me and Dad, we're gonna tackle those valve springs and all that other stuff. So probably put you on a time lapse for that, and then we'll come back to see if it's running any better than it is right now. So here we go. So me and Dad got those new springs in there. I messed up and only ordered 8 and not 16. I have 8 more coming. So we did the ones that we knew were weak. We got the new wires in there, we got the new cap and rotor on there, and we threw the new spark plugs in. So Dad's gonna fire this thing up and we're gonna see how it runs. It used to be really bad and used to shake a lot, so fingers crossed that it's gonna be better. Lacey, you're gonna run. Not bad so far. It's definitely not shaking as bad. It definitely seems a little moving on, so well, that's pretty sweet. It's definitely running a little better. I noticed there was a little bit of smoke coming out of the tailpipe. I don't know what the deal is with that. But it's definitely running a lot better and not popping and banging. So we'll throw those other 8 springs in once I get them. My bad. But now we're going to move on to that tranny. So basically everything we've done so far in this video, we're basically going to like take all back apart with that shifter boot and all that stuff. So we'll meet you back on the hoist once we're tearing this thing apart. So here we go. Alright, so once again, we got the Jeep up on the hoist, and I don't know if I've explained this already of why we need to take the transmission back out of this thing, but basically, I think there's a bad bearing inside. The thing drives like perfectly fine when you drive it in the yard here. It just makes a bunch of like noise, rotating noise, and when the motor was actually running really rough, there was like a pounding in the transmission. So I've watched a couple videos and people actually are missing ball bearings, so I'm kind of assuming that's what we got going on. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this transmission out of here. We're gonna see what's wrong with it. Hopefully that's gonna be the issue, and that we can just split this thing and then replace that bearing. So I'm gonna show you how to do that, but right now I'm gonna set you up on a time lapse and we're gonna get this transmission out of here. So let's get after it. Lacey, you gonna help? No, you just woke up, didn't you? Yeah. right, so me and Dad wrestled that transmission and transfer case out of there. We already split that off the back. I'm thinking the transfer case is fine. The fluid was pretty dark and somebody had gear oil in there. It's not supposed to be gear oil, but we're gonna fix that. But now what we gotta do is we gotta split this thing apart. So I've watched a couple videos. There are not very good stuff online, and the diagrams you can find are pretty terrible as well. So I'm probably going to try to dig into this myself and figure out how it comes apart. I do know you have to pull this plug out because there's some kind of pin that holds the main shaft with a spring. I know that there's like a C-clip behind here on the main shaft, and then I think there's one more thing I got to disconnect, but I can't remember what it is. But I'm going to get this all apart and then tell you guys how it came apart. But as soon as I get this off, I should be able to see in there to see if there's any ball bearings missing. I should be able to peel the dust cap off and look in there. So we'll get that apart, see what we find, and then show you how we're going to put her back together. Lacey the mechanic cat is here. Thanks, Lacey. Alright, so we got the transmission split apart, and it wasn't overly hard to actually get apart. All we had to do is, like I said, we had to take this out of here, and there was a spring with a pin that had to come out, so we just used a magnet to pull it out of there. There was 2 alignment dowels that we had to punch out of the case here, and then obviously we took all the bolts off, and then the only other thing is that there was this snap ring right here. We took that off, and then the 2 halves basically split apart. Everything seems to stay with the back half, so, you know, that's how we did it. I did have to put some tape around here because there's some kind of like roller bearing things that are on this shaft that go into this hole here, and I just didn't want to lose those, so I did that there. All the gears and everything look really good in here. I didn't see any pieces laying in the bottom. We were having some kind of clunking noise coming from the transmission, so I don't know if there's some kind of play within here, because you can lift this main shaft up and down, so I don't know if that's moving around in there. I don't have an idea, but this front bearing, we did take that out of there, and it does sound pretty gritty. So I did have a new one that came with the kit, so we're going to throw that in there, so I'm hoping that's going to fix some of the noise. I don't know yet, but other than that, for some reason I think somebody had this before I did, and they took the bearing they needed or whatever, because I don't have that big one that was supposed to come with it. Well, whatever, it is what it is. So we're just going to throw that new bearing in there, put this thing back together, fill it up with oil, and get it back into the Jeep. So probably next time you see it, we're going to have this all back together and actually thrown into the Jeep, because you already saw us take it apart. So basically it's going to be in reverse. So magically we're going to come back and the Jeep's going to be put all back together. Alright, so we got the Jeep all put back together. Me and Dad wrestled this transmission in. We filled it up with gear oil, and we put some oil into the transfer case. So everything's looking really awesome under here. We did a nut and bolt check. Everything's all tight, ready to go. We don't have any leaks on anything, so that's awesome. So basically the last thing I got to do is put the center console back together, and then we can go take this thing for its first drive. We do not have a front drive shaft yet, so I'm just going to take the clamps off of that and the bolts out. So I'm in the process of getting that made up, so I'm still waiting for it. And I didn't get the other transfer case. I'm actually on the hunt for that as well. So I thought we would just talk about it. So this is I think it's a 241C is what they call it. And what I'm looking for is a 241 DLD out of a 97, I think it's like a Ram 1500. So it's the exact same transfer case, but it has the proper speedo signal little, thing I'm looking for. Basically, I'll be able to put the Jeep stuff into that, and then we should get a speedometer signal from that. But for right now, all I did is I just put the plug into a bag, and I will just use my phone as a GPS speedometer. So that's my solution right now, but for now, we're just gonna bring this thing down and we're gonna take it for a rip. So fingers crossed it's gonna go good. I'm really excited. Alright guys, so we're taking this thing for its first drive. I've already drove around the block just a little bit, and I gotta say, with the V8, it is a lot better. Like, it's... Before, like, you know, it was pretty doggy. It got really good gas mileage with the 4-cylinder. Obviously, I don't know how this is gonna go yet, but, you know, it shifts through all the gears. We got a little bit of noise coming from down here. This thing always kind of had some kind of like wind noise and kind of rattles and stuff like that. So I don't know if any of that's going to change. But so far with the V8, it goes a lot better. You know, I can't be happier with it. Hopefully, you know, we'll get the 4-wheel drive working so I can test that out. But for now, this is awesome. So we'll meet you guys back at home, and we'll wrap up this video. Alright guys, well there you have it. The Jeep drives really awesome. I couldn't be happier with it. I'm going to call this basically finished up. I know we have a few things still left to do on it, like the transfer case, figuring out the speedometer, and the front drive shaft, and I still didn't make a fan shroud just yet. But you know, as it is right now, I'm not too worried with those things. They are pretty minor things. We got the majority of all the stuff finished up, and you can actually start driving this thing, so that's super cool. Basically, I had to get this finished up because winter is coming, and I didn't want to be doing this in freezing temperatures. So, you know, I couldn't be happier with how everything kind of worked out and that we figured out along the way. There probably could have been some things that we would have done differently if I would have thought of it, I guess, differently. I don't know. I'm pretty happy on which way and which direction I went with it. It definitely goes a lot quicker with this V8 than the 4-cylinder, so we're probably going to burn a lot more gas. But that's, you know, it is what it is. Now we got a V8 Jeep, and, you know, we're living the best life. But definitely stick around for like update videos and stuff like that. I usually do some shop update videos here and there, so probably once we get some stuff figured out on this thing, I'll probably throw it up on there. I don't think it needs to be a full video, and I just want to say sorry that these videos have been coming out for a longer period of time, that I haven't been posting stuff like kind of weekly. Basically, I just wanted to focus a lot more like attention to this thing and try to get it done before winter. So that's the only reason for that. So hopefully we can get back to actually getting on some more of my passion projects and getting some more videos out more frequently. It is what it is. But I just want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. I really appreciated all the help along the way here with you guys following along, telling me stuff. So if there's anything that you would have done differently on this Jeep, definitely comment down below. And, you know, tell me what I did right, what I did wrong, and, or just to say hello. So we'll see you guys next time. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for subscribing. And as always, don't forget to salute the beaver. We'll catch you next time.